AI safety will have to become the second largest industry in the world because AI will become the $7 trillion labor replacing industry, right? And then the rest of us are just like the rest of the work is really just how to harness this, how to direct it, making sure it goes well, and putting the wires in the right places. And that would be AI safety, effectively. You have to proactively decide what kind of world this is going to look like, because the change has to be so massive. So it's just, let every single thing that you work with every day as a company person, as anything, and everyone knows all the technologies that we've developed there. So I think that would be sick, right? That would be absolutely amazing. And I'm sure you're thinking the same thing, right? You're like, damn, like we want to solve the world's biggest problem here. And it's going to be amazing once we're out on the other side. And everyone's like, yes, we live a great life and AIs are having a good time and we're having a good time and our grandkids are having a good time. So that's the world that I want to see and would be proud of.
All right, welcome everyone to the 7th episode of Audio Tokens, the project where we try to generate audio data for our future AGI overlords. Today I have as a guest Esben Kran, and he is a good friend of mine, and he's been working on AI safety for a while now, but he actually started his career in brain-computer interfaces, but then had one of those days where you just realize that you need to make a switch, and he founded Apart Research, which is basically like an AI safety lab, which does hosts hackathons, and it's also like kind of a research incubator of sort. He will explain it better later, I guess. But now he's started to focus his attention more on maybe for-profit solutions for AI safety. He founded a community of AI safety founders, and is a very exciting announcement here. He's starting like an AI safety accelerator, which we are going to be a part of, my company, me and Axel at Andon Labs. So I'm extremely excited about that, and also about this podcast to learn more about what's coming up during this accelerator. Welcome, Esben.
Thank you so much, Lucas.
Yeah, so I think we should start chronologically here. You started your career in brain-computer interfaces. Do you still follow this space, or is this something that you've completely lost track of?
It's something that I'm close to losing track of. But I definitely keep it in my heart. I guess you could say that. And I sometimes check out when a Nature paper comes out and says, "Oh, we've read some neurons in the brain and they look like a transformer," or something like that. And I look at the correlation graphs and doubt the results. But some of the newer BCI results are very exciting. I think sometimes when the companies run it, it's some of the results may be inflated, but it's definitely it's definitely still an exciting space. So,
is that your general, I guess, approach? Like you doubt the results when they come out, or do you think there's hope in this area?
I think there is hope in the area. I think it's the big question is just what's most urgent. Is it the brain-computer interfacing, expanding the human experience in that way, or is it trying to secure our species in one way or another from general intelligence and super intelligence? So, and I think that one has a slightly shorter timeline than the other.
Right. So that's why you made a switch. One was more urgent than the other.
Exactly. Yeah. So I knew a lot about the risks from potential general intelligence and us creating a new species that is more intelligent than us. And every single time that has happened in history, things have come out of that might not be as helpful for the lesser intelligent species compared to the more intelligent one. And then the big insight was basically like, oh, it's not happening in the next 30 years. It's happening in the next 5 to 10 years from 22 at that time.
Right. Do you think like AI merging or something like that? Like some people have suggested that brain-computer interfaces is the solution to AI safety, because that's the way we merge with AI and become more aligned with them. Is there any hope in that direction?
I think you have to think of what are the adverse effects of developing brain-computer interfaces as well. There's a great article by Jack Rafferty talking about this concept of value lock-in of societies in the case of different technological developments, specifically brain-computer interfaces, where one of the questions you have there is basically, okay, when dictatorships have happened, usually it goes back once the dictator dies, or it goes back because the people can still make their own choices and they have some sort of power that is still, it might be a lesser proportion of the dominant power in that country or in that society, but they can still do something about it and change the country into a different regime and actually have the power to change things. But if you begin looking at a world where brain-computer interfaces exist, there's actually a pretty large argument that you will have the dominant power be able to control the minds of the population, meaning that you end up with a locked-in scenario. And so that's definitely, there are some issues with this development too. But on the other side, like, I'm pretty excited, and I think this is a rare take out there. I'm pretty excited about Meta's developments in this space, and like, I've owned the earliest VR headsets too, and developed for those, like Vive, the Valve's old, and so on and so forth. But I think there are definitely some dystopian consequences here and there, and sometimes we want to look at those while being excited about the new technology. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I heard you describe yourself as a AI techno-optimism in most cases, apart from maybe AI. I think there's a lot of people that are saying there's also the other exception, which is brain-computer interfaces because of all these dystopian reasons. But you don't subscribe to that. Do you think that the default scenario of brain-computer interfaces are positive, or what's your take?
I think it's much more positive on average. I don't know if the default case is. I investigate that more if I dedicated my career to it. But one big question is simply like, if you're a techno-optimist, you're like, yeah, technology can help us a lot, but you need it to be at a speed and at a pace that humanity and society can adapt to. So when we look at brain-computer interfaces, like, that's definitely a 20 to 30-year timescale without general general superintelligence, which means that we're looking at a world where society can adapt to the changes that will happen as a result. And that's definitely not the case with self-development and recursive self-improvement of general intelligence here.
So the exceptions you do make when you talk about being a techno-optimist is AI. Why is AI different from like previous technology shifts?
I think largely it's because you're creating a new species. Like, this is a completely different type of technology. It is a replication of the way that human intelligence has developed. And I'm extremely excited about the cases where it's applied to a constrained domain that gives you a Nobel Prize and solves protein folding, but doesn't necessarily displace our existing world before we're ready for it and before we've all discussed it in a democratic form of one way or another. So that's really the difference here. And I think just like the amount of potential risk here is way too high for it to happen within an insulated sphere of developers. Like, I think you talk about 2,000 people right now who's making the decisions for the rest of humanity, basically. Right.
How do you define species, though? Because I feel like someone looking at the steam engine in hundreds of years ago, like they would also think that's a new species. Why is it different this time?
Well, I mean, largely because they can think for themselves in one way or another. Like, steam engines can't do that. That's just like not true, right? And the same with the nuclear technology. That's super scary too, like nuclear weapons and so on. But they can't think for themselves. There isn't this self-proliferation risk. There is only an adversarial proliferation risk, right? There's only some cognizant human beings entity in the background. And one of the things I usually think about when I think of the development of AGI is that we're looking at a world where we're sort of inviting, through this technological development, we're inviting a lot of alien species to the planet. And all these alien species, some of them are very kind, and we, we're like, no, you unkind ones can't come. That's alignment, and you kind versions of this can come. And you have this genealogical development that happens in a digital space that is extremely fast and creates all these new types of aliens. And they're all different species, right? Because it's such different the intelligences and different architectures and different ways of learning that we're developing so fast. And so we invite all these, and then some people, EX and others, they sit on the other side and they're like, oh no, these stupid people only inviting the kind ones, but all the evil ones, they can probably give us a lot of, development in the biosphere. Like, they can develop our medicines and whatever. And they can give us weapons to make sure we win against the other people. But in reality, we are just inviting a lot of aliens, and we hope all the good ones are all good. Even so we test them with evaluations. We give them a little entrance quiz once they come through, right? And the evil ones, we don't give any, and we also just the evil ones we don't have any oversight over, and we let them proliferate across the internet on some kind of open source framework for why these misaligned agents should be around. And so this kind of thought also shows that it's not just one new species, it is 100 new species because of this digital genealogical development. which is very different from humans and which changes the game even more just compared to just thinking about a single entity that is super intelligent.
Right. So you think that AI, the different kinds of AGI that can come are like the variety is very high? It's because for me, it seems like right now they are all kind of doing the same thing, like ChatGPT and Claude and Gemini, kind of different. Some of them have reasoning in different ways and stuff like that, but it's basically the same thing. Is this something that will change, you think?
I think it definitely will change. I think like right now what we're seeing, and I usually think of it in this frame where, okay, you train this general prediction engine, and this is like the brain as we have it. It's just the new cortex. It's all our language faculties. It's our reasoning faculties as humans. And then you have this like beating it into submission. So we make sure it doesn't say the bad things to users. So we make sure it doesn't act out wrongly and so on and so forth. And then with jailbreaks, we can get it to go around it, right? In a similar way with humans where, oh, if we give a really good cookie to this person, they might be willing to do a criminal act for us or something like this. But with many of the current models, I agree with you. They are quite similar. But once we get to agent architectures, like again, this becomes immediately different because the way the human brain works, I usually think of it, coming from neuroscience as well, I usually think of it as this collection of all these pre-trained neural networks. We have a lot of Broadman areas where you have different architectures for different areas of the new cortex, for example. And then think of that and then just wires between them in a way that's somewhat useful and like pretty randomly generated from the evolutionary algorithm, of course. And so one just being like, okay, you have wires this way that makes humans suffer. And that's useful for a lot of things to make sure we avoid harmful experiences for the human physiology. But in reality, what you have with agents is the exact same thing. So you take the Claude agent, you put it into some framework, and you make it loop upon itself in this way. Okay, this is one species. You make it go into another Claude that is asked to do a very specific process, another Broadman area or whatever. You loop it back again. Okay, this is a new species. And you can change things very, very quickly from this. And so every time you develop a new one, you give it a new tool, etc., you actually have a kind of new species coming out of it if we take this analogy seriously.
Right. So the I guess maybe counter argument, but the way I see that differently is that I think all agents will be given all the tools. Like there will be no like vertical agent for some specific area. There will be one agent that has access to like a computer or whatever if we solve robotics, the real world. And in that world, it seems that all the agents would look pretty similar too, or do you see it differently?
Yeah, so I guess this is the like every agent will be an operator, the ChatGPT operator.
Yeah, exactly.
And this is very plausible. I think like it's probably not too useful for, maybe it is, but for a factory robot to have an operator kind of module. And so you already have at least two species there, right? Like in one way or another. And then if you were to have a human that suddenly has wings and like swim flaps or something like that, this is a new species, right? So if you give it new tools, it suddenly becomes a new kind of entity. I do agree that if we continue down like this path and it looks exactly like it does now, and the operator is the end game and everything's just operator like, then I mean it'd be safer than this like myriad of aliens. But you definitely still have this come out in terms of the open source access to these agents, and I'm generally a massive advocate of open source. But in this case, there are some risks in terms of, okay, people can just wire that together with a robo dog with a machine gun on it or something, and this looks it's a different species that we probably don't want around. And so that's what.
So, okay, two threads here, but the open source question. So it sounds like the thing with open source that you're primarily scared of is misuse, or am I getting that wrong?
I think it's a general lack of monitoring, and so that counts for both. We can split this world of AI risk into two categories of misuse and autonomous AI risks. But I think in reality, it's the same way that, I don't know, like all the same interventions will count for both of those in one way or another. And it is the lack of monitoring. I'm very, very, very wary of a world that is like a surveillance state, as some have argued. I don't think if we get governance in now that we would end up in that world. But if we get governance in 2 or 3 years, I don't know, like we might need that world, right? In the sense where it's too late to actually ensure non-proliferation of the technology across society and across all MacBook M6s or something like that, having 80 gigabytes of RAM and a little operator running on them. So
yeah. Okay, but in general, when you speak about having a new species, it doesn't sound like the main worry here is misuse of bad actors, like bad humans using AI as tools. It sounds like the thing you're worried about is this autonomous, the agent is being dangerous by itself. Is that correct?
yes, indeed. So there's definitely like a lot of risks we face with this new technology, and specifically with the speed at which it develops. So Anthony Aguirre of Future of Life Institute recently published a little table where he has like, what is the iteration speed of a self-improving agent that is able to do AI research and development? And you have just, it's 1 year, in 2022, it's 1 month in 2024, it's 1 week in 2025 in terms of like Claude is constantly
what is this? So, sorry for interrupting, but what is this timeline? What 1 month to do what?
This is just like the stages of iteration speed you can achieve as it gets more faster and faster. So here you have like one big new model per year because humans need to be there and need to develop everything, and 1 month for new models to come out because you have a lot of agent automation, a lot of like humans augmented with this technology, and then suddenly you end up in a world where now there's minutes left, and I think there are worries on both sides in terms of the autonomous agents and then the automatic incentives an agent like that has to be self-preserving, power-grabbing, etc. And then the number of these agents that will exist out there. But at the same time, you have this like all these different kinds of worlds we can end up in, where some of them also include the risks from misuse. So here we just, I think many are worried that we may see biorisk very soon, that we may see a lot of just pandemics, another COVID-19, but engineered, happen again with the help of AI. And that's extremely worrying, I think, in the shorter term.
Mm. Yeah, and you do get worried when you see reports that the Chinese government uses like the llama models to do stuff. And it's not a stretch to think that maybe some labs would use the models in that way too, for good reasons, maybe, but then it goes bad, and then it's not a great thing.
Yeah.
Okay. And so what, in learning all of this, and you now you're convinced that AI safety is the thing, you go away from brain-computer interfaces as your main career path, and you funded Apart Research. What is Apart Research, and what is the goal there?
Well, the goal with Apart Research is really to activate this whole global talent pool of people who really want to make a difference with technical development in AI safety. And so we want to be that place where you can come in, and you can come in with a great idea and possibly a great team, or find others who are amazing and simply get to work and then have impact, a month or a few months later down the line. And so how we've done this in, how we started in 2022, as you mentioned in the introduction, was actually to counter the existing culture that there was in AI safety, which was very high on critique, very low on new ideas. So you'd have maybe 1 new idea per month or something like this, and then you'd have 100 posts critiquing that idea instead of making their own iteration on it or developing it further. And that was really where there was this idea that you had to be a super genius to contribute, where we started being like, well, I mean, when you look at the research, it is high school math. It's not more difficult than that. And so you could just do it in a weekend. Like, I've been in game development before, and we had game jams, as they're called. We called the first AI safety research hackathons alignment jams for that reason as well. This whole principle of, you can actually develop a full game in a weekend. And the same here, you can actually develop a full pilot experiment in a weekend, right? Like a research report that garners new insights within just 2 days. And this has just proven immensely true. And we have more than nearly 500, I think we might have passed 500 of these projects now done with more than 4,000 participants across the world. And that's been more than, I would say, 30 nationalities. I think on the list we have like 26, but that's, a subset we've asked there. So just like making sure that everyone across the world has access to this, because both worried about people not doing enough and people being scared of doing anything because of this culture, and people also not having access to it because it was centralized in San Francisco and even London at the time. This has developed further, and I mean, we've grown, I think, 100% year over year in terms of lab size. And I think if you look at like new academic labs in machine learning and AI safety and AI and so on, we probably like just outcompete in academic output and the work we've put into some of the research conferences on that side. And then now, generally we're looking at where can this work have a real impact, and the work has been cited by OpenAI and we've co-authored with Anthropic and so on, and that's great and all, but we cannot have like very good arguments for how that fits into the deployment framework that they use or how it informs those specifically. So we're also looking at, how can our work support governance? How can we make sure that the methodology used in AI safety research, in evaluation, in control are good? And how can we sort of critique and advance the existing frameworks used? And then now we're also looking at what are the actual technical problems that we need to solve for governance to work, like the massive, large-scale problems, and for AI safety to go well in general.
Okay, interesting. So it seems like you have front row seat to look at the trends of the popularity of AI safety then, because surely if there's more popularity in society, then you would get much more applicants to participate in your research lab. So how has this developed over time? When you started in 2022, how was the public perception for AI safety and how has it developed? Has like the Jeff Hinton stuff helped? Was that like a step change? Yeah. How did it evolve?
I think largely very interesting point you make, because I think there's a few different like paths to that question, where the actual interest in the field has grown a lot. The number of seats at the table, like the number of positions open, has not grown as much at all. And with that, and the reason for not as many seats being opened is just that the funding efforts have been very lackluster. So if you look at the total amount of funding from some of the people who have funded a lot of AI safety, then since 2022, it's been like either stagnating or constant. And so this has been a big problem. Our participant size has increased with the growth of the field as well. But the actual like development of how many positions are there, where can you go, etc., has been relatively limited comparatively.
Okay, and is that like funding in terms of funding AI safety non-profit research, or is it funding in terms of like for-profit stuff like venture capitalism and stuff like that?
On both sides, I'd say. So venture capital, like the biggest investment in AI safety, you could say, was in Anthropic. And that's, their profit incentive is really on developing this new species, right? And pushing for that. And whenever, you shouldn't evaluate a company ever on the people behind it. You should always evaluate on the incentives, because the incentives will always shape it. And Anthropic luckily has like a governance structure which is quite relatively robust, but we've seen that fail with OpenAI, for example. And so I'm thinking of the type of funding that goes into work that is really aligned with making sure that AI goes well. And a lot of that is nonprofit. A bunch of that is the safety institutes and the EU AI office and the work that's happening these great places. And a lot more has happened in 2025 and 2024. And like much of our work now also is predicated on, well, we will see, like, people will see a warning shot. People will see that this technology changes the world. And they will want to deploy billions, right? They will want to put money where they can solve these problems. And if there isn't a place that, like, no organizations exist for that, if there hasn't been any seed funding for it, right, during the last 3 years, you're just not going to have it. And you're not going to have people that can absorb that. And the problem there is really that, one, it's stagnated, but two, it's just like it's been below $1 billion per year, right? And I think even just 100 million or so, right, which is nothing compared to the size of this question. I really like the framing that a friend of mine, Brandon, he puts down. He's like, AI safety will have to become the second largest industry in the world, because AI will become the $7 trillion labor replacing industry, right? And then the rest of us are just like the rest of the work is really just how to harness this, how to direct it, making sure it goes well, and putting the wires in the right places. And that would be AI safety effectively.
Right. Yeah, that's a great pitch for profit AI safety, I guess. Before we go there, because I'm very excited to go into that conversation, but I want to pick up on your comment on Anthropic. Do you believe they are a net positive for AI safety, or what's your take there?
I think, I mean, it's very hard to say, but I think probably net negative, unfortunately. And the issue I see there is simply that you've had a bit of a too quick of a convergence on the solution to this is actually to create the AGI to solve all these problems. Before you even take all the obvious solutions of, hey, should we just call up XYZ parliament member and ask, hey, what do you think? Should we ask the public? Should we make a sort of deliberation process around this? Should we get America in one room, as I think one project has it that's doing a little bit more AI discussions now too in the US? And you know, just like all the obvious steps that come before concluding that, oh, we're going to create the alien so it can do all the things, right? And that is really putting a lot of trust in it. Obviously, I mean, it's like getting I guess the analogy goes a bit far now, but like an alien baby that you can raise and, and whatever. But I think the decision process has been too fast towards that compared to just testing everything in between. I think like one great example of this has been Gladstone AI. I think they were also a YC23 or something like this. And they asked everyone like, hey, so general intelligence is coming, obvious implications here, right? That we're talking about now as well. What are you doing about it? And no one doing anything about it. And them also asking then in the Anthropic circles, hey, so have you asked the politicians? Have you gone somewhere with it? And then just not having talked with them, but having this very large conviction, this reasoning chain that didn't really happen, which is basically that, oh, you can't say any of this to politicians. They will never understand. Normal people will never understand what's going on. And now a majority of the California public wants to control and avoid stronger than human AI. And I think there was a recent YouGov poll in the UK that also said, yeah, they want actually to have better than human AIs banned. And that's a majority of the UK population. And you're like, well, if they think that, like, it's very obvious. There's been hundreds of movies over the last 100 years about AIs doing dangerous stuff. Like, people aren't confused about it as much as I think has been the grand assumption that has underlined the development of Anthropic as an organization early on.
Right. So the counter argument that I hear about this is that you can't really go to politicians and have an actual impact because they won't listen to you if you're not a big player. A non-profit will not have will not have a seat at the table, basically. And you can actually see this with Anthropic, like RSP, responsible scaling policy, was something that I think another, to be fair, a non-profit organization termed, but like only when Anthropic adopted it, OpenAI and DeepMind started to adopt it as well. So, and shout out to Meter for being that non-profit. So isn't that a great contribution to AI safety? That now most of whenever OpenAI is releasing a model, they have this model card where they evaluate it for safety reasons. And I don't think that would have happened if Anthropic didn't adopt the RSPs. To explain, RSP is basically a framework where you say, we're going to measure, every time we release a model, we're going to measure the capabilities, and then we have some threshold that if they go over this capability, then we're going to take action X. And that might be, if the capability is very high, it might be like pause development, but it might be do more monitoring if the threshold is lower. So yeah, what do you say about that? Like, surely that's a great contribution from Anthropic.
So I think the contribution itself is great, and they have these ASL 1 through 4 and 5 levels, the AI safety levels, which is similar to the biosecurity levels of labs that work with, for example, the coronavirus or something similar. How safe does that lab have to be? This is great. It was decided, it was agreed upon that all these companies got their voluntary, they volunteered to join this responsible scaling policy framework in one way or another, and they all invented their own and created their own preparedness frameworks and so on and so forth. But it was decided at the South Korean AI safety summit. And I don't know, yeah, it's great that Anthropic does this, but you can say any voluntary commitment is not enough here, because yeah, no matter what. And I think the big, I have a lot of friends at Anthropic, right, and some friends at OpenAI as well, and they're doing some amazing work, and a lot of safety development has happened there. I think we just have to like look at the facts, right, and look at the incentives that are happening. And Dio now talking about accelerating AI, right? And that's fine, I guess. But I don't know, if all of Anthropic today just began lobbying for AI safety, I think you would be in a much better situation than if Anthropic did what they do now. And one argument here is, for example, you had some of the debates recently that Max Tegmark and others ran, where you had Demis Hassabis. He's out there and is sitting in the same sofa as Dio, and Demis says, yeah, we need a technical UN for AI governance. We need a CERN for developing a public and responsible AI, and we need a form of governance control institution, a bit like the atomic and nuclear something, right? And yeah, that's great. Well, these are three fantastic safety proposals for how to make sure governments across the world have international coordination, and we can, as a species, do something good about this and make sure we don't take rushed decisions. And then you have Dio Amadei saying like, oh yeah, there's risks, but we shouldn't take them too. He could just have one-upped Demis there. And if you are out there saying Anthropic is the most safety-oriented lab, I think you're simply wrong, because Demis is out there saying that, and DeepMind in general has been working on tool AI first and foremost, because general intelligence has been quite dangerous, right? And then you have, obviously, they're owned by Google, and there are some very big competitive incentives for Google then to say you have to work on Gemini now. Sorry about that. And I think Claude is objectively better and safer than Gemini as it stands today. But I also don't think that it's DeepMind's intellectual project to develop Gemini compared to the actual scientific innovations that come from something like AlphaFold, which they obviously recently won a Nobel Prize for. And I just think you can just create very great AI without the general, and you can do fantastic things that everything we as a species want, everything we humans want, like longevity, I don't know, free of cancer, etc. This can be solved probably with agents that aren't agents, but are simply AlphaFold, are very innovative cancer screening frameworks, and so on and so forth. And I think, it's just not obvious to me that Anthropic is the most safety oriented here, despite what they, how aligned every single individual is, but the organization as a whole.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, is this the tool AI approach to AI? Do you actually think that will be so your claim is that you don't need the general, but is humanity creative enough to do all of this without the help of the other species? I think in many of these utopian scenarios, the hope is that you get the general intelligence to then be much smarter than humans, so that they can understand what research needs to be done, and then they create the tools. Do you think you can get the utopia without this?
Yes. I think it'll be a bit slower, but we will survive at a higher chance, and that's pretty nice. So I think one of the examples you might bring up here would be Dio Amadei's post Machines of Loving Grace, which is about what does this vision of all the solutions we can have for biology, all the solutions we can have for everything else, and this compressed century of knowledge creation during just 5 to 10 years, this whole idea that we can have with autonomous agents. And I think, totally, that would be amazing if they're aligned and they want the best for us, and so on and so forth, without being forced into it, right? Because there are issues with forcing conscious agents or somewhat self-aware agents into labor they don't want to do. But then if we just look at that compared to, well, Dio in that post himself says the absolutely most impressive AI advancements the last whatever years has been AlphaFold, and this other thing that's about I think materials engineering or something about genome modeling. And you're wait, but if you think this is the coolest thing, why do you have to create something that can effectively kill us and off as a species? And I think it's I was notified recently that not too recently, but that a lot of the motivations seem to echo this belief in a utopic vision that follows the Ian M. Banks culture series. That's also mentioned in Machines of Loving Grace, a quote from that as the only sci-fi story, which is about this culture that is the main dominant culture and society in this universe, and how it has superior values and how competition actually automatically converges towards this like enlightened value set. And what that story looks like if you read it, and I believe E&M Banks originally also had the intention to actually critique that. It looks very much like what pre-1900 colonialism looked like, in terms of, we are the enlightened ones, you are the barbarians, and we are going to enforce our value set on you. And that value set will be enforced through our extreme power from general intelligence. And I think, it's obvious that that's a dangerous mindset for both suffering risk and for other types of risks related to that kind of development. And I think everyone just needs to be sort of a little bit more on board before very few take very big decisions.
Right. Okay, so let's do the for-profit discussion. So you have been doing apart research and fueling all of this like non-profit research. So what is basically, what did you, so why did you turn your attention to for-profits? Was there something during the development of this like non-profit stuff that there was like a roadblock, okay, and this can only be solved with a for-profit structure? Or why did you turn your attention?
So there's a few things there. Like, one is that most technological development in the last 30 years or so has really happened through for-profits, like the deployment scale technological innovations. So SpaceX is a for-profit and obviously very successful as a company, no matter what you want to say about the founder. Anthropic is obviously hugely successful in what they've wanted to develop and then where they've come to. And it just seems like the place to do these society-scale technological innovations compared to so many other places. And on the other side, we're looking at a world where, okay, well, if AI safety is so important, over the next few years, we will see that decision makers and private equity firms and like everyone who wants their grandkids to survive in one way or another will want to put billions of dollars to this. And that's like, a predicate to one degree or another where, okay, who's going to absorb that? Non-profits aren't necessarily able to scale as fast as for-profits are. And the technological solutions we want to see need to really be aligned into this lock of, okay, you get profit per safety you create or something like that, and trying to avoid the risky developments. And then you also have that we're at a junction here where it's actually possible, where we can actually find market value in this. You have Google made their Super Bowl ad with the chatbot taking the wrong choice, right? Like saying something wrong, which is also insane that they did that. And they lose $100 billion in stock value in their market cap. And you're like, well, yeah, that cost them $100 billion. They would probably invest quite a bit in safety as a result of this. And I think we'll see more and more of these cases and spread across like all of these industries. You have a lot during the last 5 years of just like $60 million lost on some failed project about a chatbot that's gonna run the McDonald's drive-through stands and stuff like this, where just like, it is now becoming a bottom line issue on their profit and on their revenue, that safety isn't solved. And down the line, you'll see it as an even bigger risk, obviously. So when Anthropic develops the responsible scaling policies and their AI safety level scale, then one of the reasons they do it is obviously because if they develop an autonomous intelligence that might be adversarial and power seeking within their own servers, the level of safety they need to like not go under as a company because it wants to do something different than what Anthropic wants to is just very high. And so even there, you're seeing very big risks and very big investments, right? And you also see from OpenAI like a lot of safety research coming out. Obviously, it seems like whenever they publish a safety paper, they also publish like an acceleration thing that is then going under the radar. But besides that, it's it's great to see, and they'll in reality just have to do that, right? Otherwise, they're gonna get under regulatory scrutiny. They're gonna get under the public scrutiny, and down the line, they're gonna get under their internal security team scrutiny because they're not safe enough to actually monitor and control the products they develop themselves. So these are a few points. On our side, like from Apart side, we've just developed a lot of research and had this research accelerator where we've accelerated a lot of researchers' work and a lot of publications there. And the whole thing is like Apart started as a for-profit actually, trying to explore, are there these aligned ways to get revenue in and solve very big problems in AI safety? And at that time, I mean, there might have been a few, but we always saw that they were like 95% aligned with solving these problems. And today, I think we can come much, much closer to 100%. So companies that actually get money from doing evaluations for governments, and you're like, yeah, this is exactly the kind of thing where you are getting the money directly because you are safer and better than others in a safety thing. And yeah, so these are just some of the reasons, but I could list even more.
Okay, so Seldon, what is Seldon? That is that a thing that is part of a part, or is this a new venture all completely?
Yeah, and of course a mandatory pun here with, is it a part of a part? But it's very much like a sister organization, and they are working very closely together. We have some team members that work in both, but a new spin out in reality that's gonna be working on accelerating these startups that are doing very crucial work, such as you guys at Anon Labs, and try to help counterfactually really make well, now I'm talking to you, so it's like I can't talk in third person, but it's in that sense like help founders take that step to make sure they scale in a very sustainable but very, very aggressive fashion to solve the biggest problems here. And it is really, there are 100 problems, and each problem needs a $10 million company at least to sit behind it and solve that problem. And I think that's what we are going to see even more of as we get into the next few years and as AI safety becomes the world's second biggest industry, right? I don't think we're going to see like it's a single problem of alignment and then everything's good and healthy and safe, but that every single problem will need a lot of resources. And so Seldon is this project to make that happen, and to be the type of like Xerox PARC, right, of AI safety, where everyone, like some of the most ambitious innovators in the space, can sit together in one room, be supported by an immense like infrastructure of researchers that we have from apart, and the type of security infrastructure to be secure from external aggressors that might want to disrupt such work that happens in a safety lab like this, among much else, and provide also the funding, of course. So sort of competing with existing accelerators too, to build out that ecosystem even more.
Right. Was it always clear that the best approach to this was to create a new accelerator, or could there have been a world where you lobbied or like tried to work with Y Combinator or some other existing accelerator to be more AI safety focused? You could, I think Y Combinator, for example, have funded some nonprofits throughout the years. Maybe they could start like a new branch where they have a bunch of AI safety, maybe not super likely with Gary Tan as the CEO, but yeah, maybe some other accelerator. Why did you start a new one?
So it's been very interesting to explore the space here and the types of solutions over the last few years. We've, for example, collaborated a bunch with Entrepreneur First on some events and hackathons, and like working with founders there to already accelerate them a bit. And Defensive Accelerationism program that EF ran is one where we don't expect to see another one actually run because Matt Clifford is so engaged with the UK government now. So that's one place where, damn, like this program that actually has an even better case to run again won't run. And I have talked with them a lot and about like, oh, can we make it run again? Like, what can we do? Can we help you out? And it being like a little bit less possible within that frame than you would actually think. And then secondly, with Y Combinator, it is really a question of, okay, how much can you put that into an existing framework that looks like this? And the first DefAct program with EF being an example of it. And how successful will it be to really focus on the types of things that we are talking about here, right? On the types of things that you already see. And I hope that we can work with the existing actors as much as possible. But I think something new is necessary here. Something that actually really gets what's going on and works hard towards this, while maintaining this type of like really high quality teams and that move really fast. Because I think, another thing is like YC has become very big in recent years. And I think they've become a like large train that if they want to make a little track on the side, like I don't know if the biggest in that team is going to be part of it, and we'll continue, like making sure we're connected to the space and know what's happening, so we can help out there as things come up. And they just have a lot of resources to make large things happen. But we do need something new. We do need something that has a mindset that is very targeted here.
Okay. And what kind of startups are you looking to fund? What is the maybe give us some ideas that I don't know if you can say which ones are in the first batch, but if you can, maybe or otherwise some ideas that you would like to fund.
I think at least three of them are stealth right now, so I probably shouldn't mention too much. But
Then don't.
yeah, I won't. But the topics we're interested in, and that we try to be very connected with, like the decision makers about who gets funding, right? Who buys stuff, so ACs and labs, like who funds things, so existing VCs, and who are the decision makers at a place like Aria with safeguarded AI and where they are thinking a lot about what are all the solution pathways and where can it go wrong here, and okay, we've killed that strand and then go another place, right? Like making sure we can do differential technology development. So this is an open question that constantly shifts. I think if you look at the AI space in general, and I think you have some great posts already on this, as I understand it, about like the bitter lesson for startup founders. So the general project of creating a startup in AI in the first place, you're missing a lot of moats these days. And as a like YC makes 100 companies happen in AI, but they're all software, and soon like I within a part can sit and vibe code on lovable.dev, like some epic new communication platform that automates all my email or something, then I probably don't need that YC startup to actually exist necessarily, because I also want that control, right? And so we're thinking generally of the moat and of what is differentially very relevant. And in here, we see a lot of like hardware, a lot of ecosystem plays. So the people who are already within the right circles and the places where they are trusted actors. And we see also these big questions that will be massive markets soon, but aren't right now. So formal verification being one. And we look at these places where okay, can we support governments in making the right governance decisions? So if you look at what enabled the nuclear test ban, like nuclear weapons test ban back in the last century, and that was because people invented methods to analyze seismographs to make sure that you could see that anyone tested nuclear weapons anywhere on Earth, right? And the same sort of development we need in AI, really. And there are some caveats to that story, of course, but these are the kind of things we're also looking a lot at. And otherwise, like other categories, is just exposing faults in general intelligence, making sure we have incident response, making sure we understand what's going on, and for that matter, also helping out with blue teaming, and making sure that labs, companies that are working with governments and defense contractors and military and whatever can actually live up to the AI safety levels here, right? So I think the only lab in the world right now that I trust is a big word, but that I hope will be able to reach the right security level with something like AGI is Anthropic, because they have the most expansive framework for it. And the other is honestly it's DeepMind, because they're probably gonna avoid it until they're able to do it, which would be a hope. But they have enough projects already that they don't need this to like create the big breakthrough, right, in their profits. So yeah.
You mentioned the formal verification as one of the potential things that will be big in the future, but it's not at the moment. What are some other questions like that?
I think if you imagine what is like I usually talk about, what is the world we have to build to make sure humanity is safe with superintelligence. So just assuming superintelligence will happen because profits are moving that direction, like a Moore's attractor or something like that for intelligence development and intelligence progress. If you assume it will happen, what is that world? And I think right now it's I've mentioned it before, but it's a little bit defeatist of the companies to actually pursue this path where you just assume that the AGI will happen and then you align it and hope that everything will be good and that it will solve all the problems, instead of proactively making sure that the world and the infrastructure and the humanity as we are today, societies, decision-making structures, democracies, etc., that they actually work to be ready for this change. And that's where I think you're going to see a lot of technologies emerge that are going to be massive if we want to make sure and if people realize the kinds of infrastructure we need. So not just talking about formal verification there, what industries will be even bigger? You have obvious data center security. It's just tamper security. You have flexible hardware-enabled guarantees, these guarantees that you can put in place from government side through regulation. that you can flexibly put in place on different data centers and GPUs and so on and so forth. You have a lot of like, I would say just what does the infrastructure of digital existence and information processing look like? And one is, the internet today. Okay, as the internet looks now, do you trust that to be ready for generally intelligent agents? I personally don't think so. I think some people in like this web infrastructure development space, they do believe that the protocols as we have them, they're safe enough, for even AI agents to exist on. I think it's just not as safe as folks hope for. I think it might be bug free, right? But we're also talking about infosphere contamination and potential disruption of human psyches here on something like Facebook platforms, where suddenly 90% of the content is AI generated, and humans are there, getting all this different information that can completely change their opinions.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I think you should, as the Seldon accelerator, should do something like request for startups that YC do, but with those kind of ideas instead.
Yeah,
that would be. I think that would attract a lot of people, because I think there's a lot of people that say now, oh, AI safety, that is important. I want to work on it, and then they don't really know what to work on and what's the next step after that. So I think clearer communication like that would be amazing. Hopefully they listen to this pod and hear it this way, but some like 30-second clips on exactly what to build, that would be, I think you would increase your applicant rate by a lot if you do that. So maybe something we can work together on. I'm happy to help.
Wonderful. Yeah, I would love to. I think it's definitely, we have some drafts for it.
Cool.
It's really about like reaching a state where we can be truly confident in the ideas, and part of that is also running this first batch and then doing the like, hey, this is what's up. This is what we want to see, and now we want 10,000 applicants, right? To filter that down to 10 or so. And we might publish it earlier, so you can like incubate the thoughts for people ready to quit their careers at some big AGI companies or something like this, for anyone listening. But we'll see.
Yeah. How do you support? How is it different to support AI safety companies rather than? So how would your work as the supporting structure be different compared to what YC is doing, for example? So basically, when I start Seldon in a month or two, what can I expect in terms of how would that look different from when I went through YC?
This first program run that we're doing will also be us figuring out where can we really make a big change for you guys, right? Where can we be the differentiator? And I think a lot of that will be on network effects for sales channels, like for who's going to be the customers here, and making sure, hey, like you're doing this, they want to buy it, here you go, and you don't need to do like a 200 different people and chat with them, but we can do that. Another being like, what is the safety level that you need to achieve to actually contract with existing companies and existing governments, and that being sort of grandfathered in the organization itself, so you skip like a 2 to 5 month process of security clearances and SOC 2 verifications and whatever. And another just being the money. Obviously, I think the first group here are already funded, such as you guys, and that's a case where further down the line, like we just want to make sure people have enough resources to actually work really fast in this direction, and then everything that is about just acting fast as possible on everything that you're working on. And I think compared to some other programs, so DefAg ran in a similar way as EF's normal program, so Entrepreneur First's normal program, which is you sort of have a people individually coming in and then finding their co-founders in it, and then developing their idea, and then doing the demo day preparations. And I think there's a little bit of a risk there of not focusing enough on the product, not focusing enough on what are we really going to build. And we just want to make sure that there is no distractions here. Like we're going to ensure that, yes, some of these safety companies will need quite different governance structures, and we'll work with, so we have a founding advisor in Eric Ries, and Eric Ries has helped do some existing very responsible, like the long-term benefit trust, these kind of structures for public benefit corporations to be really aligned and maintain their alignment, while being profitable opportunities for investors as well. Where we hope to just make that a real testing pool for, okay, can we build these governance structures that are really good, but without any of the founders everything about it except us. Like, hey, here's a little presentation. We think this should be the case. This is what's up. And then no spreadsheets from there. No, like, hey, can you give me this information? Can you whatever? Because we want to focus so much on accelerating all the things that really matter.
Right. And another thing that might be different is that you say on the Seldon accelerator website that you also help companies assess the impact that they have. How do you do that? What is that process looks like?
So we have I think if you saw them, you would like laugh at the complexity of some of our theory of change models for a part, for example. But we just have a lot of experience doing this. And I think that's a place where, initially you'll just have a bunch of discussions about what is the right play here. And we want to make sure that, like, okay, we are very opinionated and have very strong, like, taste when it comes to which directions are promising. We will experiment in all directions, right? Like, that's what all this is about. It's about moving fast, right? And figuring out what works and what doesn't. And us having those opinions about what's impactful directions is one thing. Another thing is simply like evaluating post hoc. Hey, do we think this was great? Do we think this wasn't? And having that expertise as well.
Mm. One part of Seldon is also the funding, as you say, and that comes from other VCs now that are focused on AI safety. Are they like a philanthropic endeavor, or do they actually expect to make great returns? Is AI safety a great VC case, basically?
So I think it is. Like, if you buy the argument that, hey, it's going to be extremely important, it's a great VC case. The main, like, some of the investors we talk with who are very value aligned there on like the potential of this technology and what it means, have stopped funding for-profit projects, or like have stopped doing for-profit investing, but still support through grants and non-dilutive funding, because they don't think they'll see the impact, like see the return on investment before we are in a completely different world. And this, of course, you have to rely on a continued capitalistic system wherein you can achieve those gains. But if that happens, like, it will be one of the most profitable places to put the money, right? And separately, I think, like, as an investor as well, if you look at the growth of impact investing in climate and so on, like, it's just an extremely good impact case. And we see some investors like evaluate it as like aligned with their grant making as well, if it's some of the foundations. But otherwise, like, there's a bigger and bigger ecosystem emerging here that we're trying to make sure we stay tapped into.
Do you expect that for-profits will encounter difficult ethical dilemmas managing, like, the forces of capitalism versus the impact that they started off as the, like, main goal, but then maybe get slightly off the path because they need to survive as a for-profit as well? And is this like a concern you have for the companies in Seldon?
This is a concern. I think it's also like, we're not hyper religious about this in the way where I think some companies I do see where, like, oh yeah, to grow and be like reach the stage they want to in terms of impact, they have to do something slightly different on the way there. And you could argue, like, similarly, if you're Demis Hassabis and you've played chess since you're 4 years old, and then you make a plan for, okay, how are we gonna get funding to just do the, like, Nobel Prize winning research? It's gonna happen by us, like, solving freaking Dota or Go or something random, and you're like, that seems a little bit different than what you want to do, but in reality, it's like part of the plan, right? And as long as that plan is in place and has provisions for making sure it happens, then it's great. I think very often, as we've seen with the board drama with OpenAI, if like all these governance structures, all these, like, ways to stay aligned, it really relies on the founders, right? And I hope that we can find, and it's something we've had as sort of an experiment in the last year, right? Can we find enough people who are very value aligned and very builder aligned as well? And it's this overlap of cultures that is missing and we need more of. But we've seen that we can find, like, those crucial folks, such as yourself, of course, and make sure that we can assist as much as possible and make sure it really happens what they plan to.
Cool. Apart from, so Seldon is, and also apart is, like, focused on, like, technical solutions to AI safety, right? What do you see as other, like, in terms of regulation, social pressure, stuff like this? what other things needs to be in place to solve AI safety?
In terms of like for-profit projects here, which I can take first, one is, for example, like these ecosystem plays and incentive restructuring, right? So one question of one industry that often comes up here is insurance. Insurance is about risk management. It's about like, you pay me money, I evaluate what kind of money do I need to make sure that your super intelligence doesn't screw the whole company up, and what provisions do you have to put in place. So if you're an ASL2 lab, an AI safety level 2 lab, and you create an ASL4 AI, you're not gonna be able to get insurance on that, and your company will go under probably soon, because it's too big of a risk to insure for. And I think in many ways, I like one of the biggest insurance companies in the world, in one of their recent, I was checking it out, and one of their recent like letters to investors, the CEO just wrote out like, yeah, like AI is going to be massive, and this is all going to change this whole game. And I think it's a place where we can make a little bit of a smaller difference, because it's so much about restructuring the world's incentives. Technology development is a very big play on the short term, I think, and very important for like, here's a new, like, if you think of how like the step changes of society, these happen with technology, and then if you want these like more gradual changes, like incentive design through insurance mechanisms, then you have to already be up here in terms of influence, and then change it there, right? And get the last stages. So that's one category that we're very open to, but which we're little bit less excited about being able to support from our side compared to many others. And then separately, I think all this technological development and these solutions, they rely on governance going really well. They rely on the public being aware of these things. It relies on the CEOs of PE firms or whatever to be aware of this. It relies on the investors being aware of this. So there is two categories there. Obviously, there's the regulation itself. Okay, well, we want the technology to be able to implement compute governance, for example. Okay, well, in that case, we need regulators to begin putting down regulation for compute, and putting down export controls, and putting down the EU AI Acts for something like, yes, your model has to be transparent and interpretable. Okay, now you are an industry creator, and suddenly this interpretability company can earn money, right? And then on the other side, you need folks like Jeffrey Hinton, like Joshua Bengio, like Max Tegmark, like Demis Hassabis, to just be in the newspapers and say, hey, this is a massive risk. I think we should do this, and we shouldn't do this, and this is why. And then people will read that and they'll be like, oh yeah, I saw that in Terminator. That makes a lot of sense. Perfect, right? I'm going to spend a lot of money on making sure that my grandkids can continue their existence and so on. And I think those like, we rely a lot on that to happen. So that's really important too.
Final question. So now, let's say it's 10 years from now, 2035, and we're living like in the sci-fi utopia. Alignment went well. There's no existential risk from AI anymore. They are aligned with us. They give us all the medicine. It's everything is great. You sit by the sea and you look out, and it's beautiful, and you meditate on your contributions to this society. What are you most proud of in this moment?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think it's just like, okay, we helped create, incubate, and possibly even come up with the initial ideas, like the seeds that are the foundations for why the society exists in the first place. So a lot of that is like, okay, every single day, every human on Earth uses this technology to make sure that their AI doesn't like take over their family's lives or whatever, right? And this verification mechanism that is used in every single social media app and government contracting, and this, like, all these things where you're like, yeah, the world looks completely different because we are here. And I think very much of what are the possible worlds where the default is just not objective, right? Like the default is not that you're safe. And so if we are safe, like, that will be because of this very strong pressure and this very strong acceleration of defensive technologies, I think some call it. And I think that's still too weak of a statement, because you have to proactively decide what kind of world this is going to look like, because the change has to be so massive. So it's just, that every single thing that you work with every day as a company person, as anything, and everyone knows all the technologies that we've developed there. So I think that would be sick, right? That would be absolutely amazing. And I'm sure you're thinking the same thing, right? You're like, damn, like we want to solve the world's biggest problem here, and it's going to be amazing once we're out on the other side. And everyone's like, yes, we live a great life, and AIs are having a good time, and we're having a good time, and our grandkids are having a good time. So that's the world that I want to see and would be proud of.
And I definitely hope we do achieve that, and you get to be proud of that achievement. Thanks so much for talking to me today. It was great having you.
Yes, as always, a pleasure. See you.
Bye.